Blanchard Cemetery, located in Blanchard, Oklahoma, holds a dark and eerie reputation. It is home to some of the oldest graves in the state, with headstones that date back to the late 1800s. This cemetery, surrounded by tall trees and sprawling fields, is a place where time seems to stand still. The cemetery's quiet, secluded atmosphere makes it an ideal location for those who are curious about the unknown. But what many don't realize is that it's not just the age of the cemetery that makes it special. It's the strange occurrences that have been reported by visitors for decades. When you walk through Blanchard Cemetery, you can't help but feel a sense of history around you. The old graves, some worn down by the years, tell the stories of families that have long since passed. But despite its calm appearance, there's an unsettling air that lingers over the grounds. Many visitors have claimed to experience something inexplicable, and it's led some to believe that the spirits of the past are still here, lingering between the grave markers and faded monuments. Reports of strange sightings have been circulating for years. Some say they've seen shadowy figures moving between the trees at night, while others report hearing ghostly whispers carried by the wind. These eerie encounters have sparked much curiosity and even fear. People who visit the cemetery often report feeling an overwhelming sense of unease, as though they are being watched by unseen eyes. For many, these chilling experiences raise the question, is Blanchard Cemetery truly haunted? In addition to the ghostly sightings, there have been reports of unexplained noises. Visitors have claimed to hear footsteps following them along the narrow paths, or the sounds of chains dragging across the ground in the dead of night. Some have even captured strange audio recordings while visiting, with the voices of what sound like people long gone. These strange phenomena only add to the mystery of Blanchard Cemetery, leaving some to wonder if the spirits of the past are still trying to communicate with the living. While there are many theories about why Blanchard Cemetery might be haunted, one thing is clear. This place has a long, dark history. Some believe that the strange activity is tied to the cemetery's location and its past, which includes the devastating tornado that struck the area in the early 1900s. Others believe that the many unmarked graves throughout the cemetery may be contributing to the paranormal activity, as the spirits of those buried there are restless and seeking attention. As we explore further, we will learn more about the eerie happenings at Blanchard Cemetery and delve into the chilling stories passed down through the generations. What makes this cemetery so intriguing is not just its age, but the feeling that something is still lingering on the grounds, waiting, watching, and perhaps even reaching out. One of the most fascinating and unsettling features of Blanchard Cemetery is the large number of unmarked graves that rest within its boundaries. It's estimated that thousands of people are buried in this cemetery, but only a small fraction of them have headstones to mark their final resting place. This has led to many questions about the identities of those buried here and the circumstances of their deaths. Why are so many of the graves unmarked? What happened to the individuals whose names and stories have been lost to time? The presence of these unmarked graves has fueled many theories about the cemetery's haunting reputation. Some believe that the restless spirits of those buried without recognition are the cause of the paranormal activity. Without proper markers or acknowledgement, these souls are said to be wandering, seeking attention from the living. The idea of forgotten souls, whose stories were never told, resonates deeply with many visitors who feel a sense of sadness and unease as they walk through the cemetery. Could these spirits be trying to reach out to us, desperate for their names to be remembered? There is a haunting possibility that the unmarked graves may have been the result of tragic or untimely deaths. During the late 1800s and early 1900s, Oklahoma faced numerous hardships, including violent storms, disease outbreaks, and poverty. It's possible that many people were buried without proper records, their lives ending in ways that were never documented. Some local accounts suggest that these individuals may have been victims of tragedies that left them forgotten by history, only to have their spirits linger in the place where they were buried. One of the theories regarding the unmarked graves is that they may belong to individuals who passed away during the devastating tornado that struck the area in the early 1900s. Tornadoes were a common and deadly occurrence in Oklahoma, and the damage they caused was often catastrophic. Many families lost their homes and loved ones in such storms, and it's possible that some were buried in the cemetery without the chance for a proper burial or identification. The thought of so many unknown lives ending in such a tragic way adds to the eerie atmosphere of the cemetery, with the spirits of those lost souls seemingly restless in their graves. As you explore the cemetery, the lack of headstones and markers becomes more striking, especially in the older sections of the graveyard. There's a sense of mystery that hangs over these forgotten areas, where the names of the dead have been erased by time. It's almost as though the cemetery itself is holding on to the secrets of those who are buried there. And it's these secrets that seem to give the location its haunted aura. The strange occurrences at Blanchard Cemetery may be tied to these unmarked graves, as many visitors report feeling a cold presence or a sudden sense of unease when walking through these areas. Some have claimed to hear whispers or see fleeting shadows darting between the graves, and others say they felt a heavy, suffocating atmosphere when standing near the unmarked sites. Whether these experiences are the result of a heightened sensitivity to the paranormal or the lingering energy of the deceased, it's clear that the mystery surrounding the unmarked graves is an essential part of the cemetery's haunting legacy. In the next part, we will dive deeper into the tragic events that may have contributed to the cemetery's dark energy, examining how these stories have shaped the eerie reputation of Blanchard Cemetery. Blanchard Cemetery is not just a resting place for the dead, but also a witness to some of the darkest chapters in the history of the region. Over the years, several tragic events have occurred nearby or within the cemetery grounds, and these stories contribute to the eerie atmosphere that haunts the place today. One of the most unsettling aspects of the cemetery's history involves the lives lost under mysterious or violent circumstances, leaving a lingering energy that many believe still remains. In the early part of the 20th century, Oklahoma experienced its share of tragedies, from devastating storms to violent acts that disrupted the peace of local communities. One of the most notable tragedies tied to Blanchard Cemetery was the brutal murder of a local family in the early 1900s. The crime was so gruesome that it shocked the entire area. The family members were buried in Blanchard Cemetery, but the details of their deaths remain unclear, adding to the intrigue surrounding the cemetery's haunted reputation. Rumors of strange happenings in the cemetery began circulating shortly after the family's burial. Witnesses claimed to have seen shadows flickering near their graves at night, and some even reported hearing faint cries or whispers coming from the area where the family was buried. While there's no concrete evidence that these occurrences were connected to the murders, many believe that the tragic events surrounding the family's death played a role in creating a strong emotional energy that manifests as paranormal activity. Some say the spirits of the murdered family are still seeking justice, and their restless souls are trapped within the cemetery, unable to move on. Blanchard Cemetery is also tied to the region's history of racial tension, particularly in the late 1800s and early 1900s. As previously mentioned, the cemetery contains a section where former slaves are buried, and it's believed that this area is one of the most active in terms of paranormal sightings. While the details of the lives of these individuals are largely unknown, their graves represent a painful chapter in Oklahoma's history. The emotional weight of the struggles they endured during their lives may have contributed to the lingering energy that many claim to experience when walking through this part of the cemetery. In the years following the Civil War, tensions between races were high in many parts of the country, and Oklahoma was no exception. As African Americans fought for equality and better living conditions, they often faced hostility and violence. The area around Blanchard Cemetery like many other rural locations, was no stranger to this racial tension. It is believed that the emotional scars from these struggles could explain some of the paranormal activity reported in the cemetery, particularly in the area where former slaves were laid to rest. Visitors to this section of the cemetery have reported hearing disembodied voices and seeing movement in the shadows, particularly when walking alone at night. Beyond the stories of murder and racial strife, the history of Oklahoma itself has contributed to the cemetery's dark energy. The state has long been a land of hardship, where settlers endured frequent storms, harsh winters, and illnesses. In particular, tornadoes have shaped both the landscape and the stories of the people buried in Blanchard Cemetery. As mentioned earlier, it's believed that many of those buried without markers may have been victims of tragic accidents, including tornadoes that swept through the region. These violent storms have left behind an emotional residue that some believe is responsible for the ghostly sightings and strange occurrences reported by visitors. As we continue, we'll explore the most active areas of Blanchard Cemetery, including the section where former slaves are buried, and share first-hand accounts of paranormal experiences that have taken place in these spots. These chilling tales will shed light on why Blanchard Cemetery remains one of the most haunted locations in Oklahoma. Blanchard Cemetery is known for its eerie atmosphere, and certain sections of the cemetery seem to be especially active when it comes to paranormal activity. Visitors and paranormal investigators alike have reported a variety of unsettling experiences in these areas, and it's here where the most chilling stories emerge. One of the most notorious spots within the cemetery is the section where former slaves are buried. This area has long been considered the heart of the cemetery's paranormal activity. The atmosphere here is notably heavier, and many people claim to have felt a sudden sense of unease upon entering this section. Some visitors have reported hearing whispers carried on the wind, although no one is visible nearby. Others have seen shadows darting between the trees or across the headstones, seemingly moving of their own accord. These sightings are often described as figures that appear to be standing watch over the graves, or perhaps still lingering in the area, unwilling or unable to move on. The history of racial struggles and hardship tied to this part of the cemetery may contribute to the strong emotional energy that seems to radiate from these graves. People who have ventured into this section at night describe feeling as though they are being watched, and some even claim to hear what they interpret as footsteps following them as they walk through the rows of the graves. The unsettling feeling of being watched is one of the most commonly reported sensations in this area. A particularly chilling event took place during a paranormal investigation in the late 1990s. The team was in the section where former slaves are buried, conducting an EVP, electronic voice phenomenon session, when they captured a chilling voice on their recorder. The voice, which was captured amidst what seemed to be total silence, said a single word: "Help." The investigators were left shaken by the discovery. Though the voice could not be traced to anyone living in the area at the time, it left a lasting impression on those who heard it. Some believe this might be the voice of one of the spirits of the former slaves, still seeking assistance or peace. Another section of Blanchard Cemetery that attracts a great deal of attention is the area near the oldest headstones, some dating back to the late 1800s. The grave markers here are worn and weathered, and it's clear that they've been exposed to the elements for many years. Despite their age, many of these graves seem to be particularly active. In fact, some of the most vivid, ghostly sightings have occurred near these old graves. Several visitors have reported seeing figures standing near the weathered headstones, figures that seem to vanish as quickly as they appear. These sightings often occur on foggy nights, adding to the atmosphere of mystery. One well-known account involves a group of visitors who came to Blanchard Cemetery one evening to explore the old graves. As they walked past one of the oldest headstones, they reported seeing a figure in a long dark coat standing motionless near the grave. The figure, they claimed, appeared to be a man who had been standing there for years. As the group approached to get a better look, the figure suddenly disappeared into the fog, leaving the visitors stunned and unable to explain what they had just witnessed. It's not just the visual sightings that make Blanchard Cemetery particularly haunting. The sounds are just as disturbing. In one particularly frightening encounter, a woman who was walking alone through the cemetery heard the distinct sound of a child's laughter echoing in the distance. There was no one around, and the only movement was the wind rustling through the trees. The laughter seemed to come from behind a row of tombstones, and as the woman approached, it stopped abruptly. The woman, shaken, quickly made her way to the exit. It is believed by some that the spirit of a young child, whose grave is unknown, may still haunt the area. Perhaps the most unsettling feature of the cemetery is the sheer number of unmarked graves scattered across its grounds. There are estimated to be thousands of such graves, and the exact number remains unclear. Visitors to the cemetery have reported feelings of sadness and a sense of loss when walking through these unmarked areas. Some claim that the restless spirits of those buried without headstones still wander the cemetery, looking for recognition. Their energy is said to manifest as cold spots, unexplained noises, and even the sensation of a hand brushing against the back of the neck. While some might attribute these occurrences to the cemetery's dark history and the tragedy surrounding it, others believe that the restless spirits are simply unable to move on because of the lack of closure, leaving their souls trapped in the cemetery. This emotional energy may account for the overwhelming sense of sadness that visitors have described feeling when walking through the cemetery, especially in the unmarked grave sections. In the final part of this video, we'll explore the most spine-chilling encounter ever reported at Blanchard Cemetery, the one that has left both skeptics and believers alike questioning the truth of what happened. Stay tuned to hear the full story and decide for yourself if Blanchard Cemetery is indeed haunted or if these accounts are just the stuff of legends. As we come to the final part of our exploration of Blanchard Cemetery, we dive into the most terrifying account ever reported by visitors to the cemetery. It's a tale that has been passed down over the years, and though it's been met with skepticism, those who experienced it swear that what they encountered that night was something far beyond normal. The event took place in the early hours of the morning, in the year 1998. A group of paranormal investigators, led by an experienced team from a nearby town, ventured into Blanchard Cemetery to conduct an overnight investigation. They had heard of the cemetery's haunted reputation and were eager to explore its eerie grounds, hoping to capture definitive evidence of the paranormal. Equipped with cameras, EVP recorders, and other ghost hunting tools, they set up in various sections of the cemetery, including the area where former slaves are buried and around the unmarked graves. The night began uneventfully, with the team setting up their equipment and taking notes about the atmosphere. The fog was particularly thick that evening, wrapping itself around the headstones and casting a ghostly glow from the dim light of their flashlights. As the investigation proceeded, the team began to hear strange sounds, whispers and footsteps that seemed to echo through the still night air. However, the team continued to focus on gathering evidence, using their equipment to capture any unexplained phenomena. It wasn't until nearly 3 hours into the investigation that the group experienced something truly chilling. The team had gathered near the oldest section of the cemetery, where the weathered headstones stood like silent sentinels of the past. They began to set up an EVP session, hoping to communicate with any spirits that might be lingering in the area. As they began asking questions aloud, one of the investigators, a man named Mark, suddenly stopped speaking. His eyes went wide as he looked toward a nearby headstone, frozen in place. The others quickly turned to follow his gaze, but they saw nothing at first. It wasn't until they took a few steps toward the grave that they noticed the shape of a figure standing motionless in the distance. The figure appeared to be a man, standing upright, his form barely visible through the mist. The team tried to approach, but as they moved closer, the figure began to fade, slowly vanishing into the fog, as though it had never been there at all. What made the situation even more disturbing was the sudden temperature drop that followed. The air grew icy, and the team could see their breath fogging in front of them, despite the warm weather that had preceded their arrival. They quickly checked their equipment to ensure nothing was malfunctioning, but all readings came back normal. The eerie feeling of being watched intensified, and the investigators felt an overwhelming sense of dread that they couldn't explain. Despite the unsettling encounter, the team decided to press on. They moved to another area of the cemetery, hoping to gather more evidence of the paranormal activity. But just as they were about to begin their next EVP session, something truly horrifying happened. One of the investigators felt a sudden and sharp pain on the back of her neck. She spun around, convinced that something had struck her, but there was nothing there. She was left shaken, unable to explain the sensation. As the group began to gather around her to check for any injuries, they heard a voice, faint but unmistakable, whispering in the distance. It was a voice none of them recognized, one that seemed to come from somewhere deep within the cemetery. The voice, which seemed to be calling her name, was captured on their audio recorder. When they played it back, they were horrified to hear it clearly. "Leave now." It was a chilling command, one that no one in the group could explain. At that moment, they knew they had encountered something far beyond what they had expected. The team quickly gathered their equipment and left the cemetery in a hurry, unable to shake the feeling that they were being followed. They reported the event to local authorities, but there was no logical explanation for what had happened. The voice on the recording, the figure in the fog, and the physical sensation that she had experienced all pointed to one thing. Something was at Blanchard Cemetery. Something that didn't want them there. Since that night, Blanchard Cemetery has only gained more attention, with many visitors reporting similar experiences. Whether it's the chilling whispers, the ghostly figures, or the strange sensations felt while walking among the graves, the cemetery remains a place of mystery. The spirits of those buried there, particularly the former slaves and those in unmarked graves, seem to be lingering in the fog, trying to communicate with those who dare to enter. In conclusion, Blanchard Cemetery is a place that leaves a lasting impression on anyone who visits. Its dark history, the stories of tragic deaths, and the inexplicable paranormal activity make it a place that will continue to send chills down the spine of anyone who steps foot within its gates. The spirits of the past seem to be restless, their stories waiting to be told, their voices calling out from the shadows. Whether or not you believe in the paranormal, one thing is certain. Blanchard Cemetery is a place that holds many secrets, and it's a place that will leave you questioning what lies beyond the grave. Nestled in the quiet countryside near Weatherford, Oklahoma, lies Dead Woman's Crossing, a place whose name alone sends a chill down the spine. While it may seem like just another unassuming stretch of road, its dark history tells a tale of sorrow and mystery that has captured the imagination of locals for over a century. To understand why this place is so haunted, we have to go back to the early 20th century, when a tragedy unfolded that would leave its mark on the area forever. The story begins in the summer of 1905. A young schoolteacher named Katie DeWitt James, a 29-year-old woman from Custer City, set out on a journey with her infant daughter after deciding to leave her troubled marriage. Katie planned to stay with her cousin in nearby Ripley, Oklahoma, hoping to start a new chapter in her life. However, she never reached her destination. After leaving Custer City, Katie was last seen boarding a wagon with a woman named Fanny Norton, who was known locally as a Lady of the Night. The pair traveled together for some time, but by the following morning, Katie's infant daughter was found abandoned and unharmed along the roadside near Weatherford. Katie, however, was nowhere to be found. Days later, the lifeless body of Katie DeWitt James was discovered along a creek near the now infamous overpass. Her throat had been cut, and her death was ruled a homicide. Fanny Norton, who was suspected of being involved in Katie's death, denied any wrongdoing. Witnesses claimed to have seen Fanny washing blood from her clothing but no charges were ever brought against her. Before authorities could investigate further, Fanny took her own life by ingesting poison. The unsolved murder of Katie DeWitt James has haunted the area ever since. Locals say the tragedy left an indelible scar on the land, with some believing her restless spirit lingers, searching for justice or peace. The stretch of road where her body was found became known as Dead Woman's Crossing, a grim reminder of the young mother whose life was cut short. Over time, stories began to surface about eerie encounters at the site. People passing through started reporting strange sensations, an inexplicable sadness, a chill in the air, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. It wasn't long before whispers of hauntings began to spread, tying the ghostly activity to the tragic events of 1905. Dead Woman's Crossing isn't just a story about a haunting. It's a story about a life stolen too soon, a mystery left unsolved, and a place where the line between the living and the dead feels impossibly thin. In the following parts, we'll explore the eerie experiences of those who have braved this haunted road and dive deeper into the ghostly phenomena that have earned this location its dark reputation. Dead Woman's Crossing may have begun as a site of tragedy, but over the years, it has become synonymous with eerie experiences and unexplainable events. As stories of hauntings grew, so did the intrigue surrounding this remote Oklahoma location. For locals and visitors alike, the crossing has become a chilling symbol of the unknown. One of the most enduring legends tied to the crossing is the tale of a ghostly figure seen wandering near the creek where Katie DeWitt James's body was found. Described as a woman in an old-fashioned white dress, the apparition is said to appear late at night, moving along the roadside or standing still by the water's edge. Witnesses often describe her as translucent, with a sorrowful expression etched into her pale face. This ghostly figure has been nicknamed the Lady in White, a common motif in haunted folklore, but her connection to Katie's untimely death gives the sightings an extra layer of poignancy. Visitors have reported a range of unsettling experiences while passing through Dead Woman's Crossing. Some claim to hear faint cries or the sound of a baby wailing, which many believe is tied to the abandonment of Katie's infant daughter on the roadside. Others describe hearing whispers carried on the wind, so faint they seem almost imagined, yet too distinct to ignore. These auditory phenomena often leave witnesses with a lingering sense of unease, as if the voices are trying to communicate something just beyond comprehension. Paranormal investigators who have explored the crossing often report sudden drops in temperature, even on warm summer nights. Many have also noted the presence of electromagnetic disturbances, with their equipment malfunctioning or registering unexplained spikes in activity. One investigator claimed that while standing near the creek, they felt an unseen force tugging on their clothing, as though trying to pull them toward the water. Adding to the mystery is the strange behavior of animals in the area. Locals say that dogs often refuse to go near the crossing, barking or whining as they approach. Horses, too, have been known to become skittish, their ears pinned back and their movements hesitant, as if sensing something humans cannot see. One chilling account comes from a group of travelers who parked near the crossing late at night. As they sat in their car, they noticed the headlights dimming and the engine sputtering. Suddenly, they saw what appeared to be a shadowy figure standing in the middle of the road. Panicked, they turned the ignition, but the car refused to start. When the figure began to move closer, the group described feeling an overwhelming sense of dread. Just as suddenly as it appeared, the figure vanished and their car roared back to life. While skeptics may dismiss these experiences as tricks of the imagination, the sheer number of similar stories lends weight to the idea that something unexplained lingers at Dead Woman's Crossing. Whether it is the restless spirit of Katie DeWitt James or the residual energy of a violent past, the crossing remains a magnet for those seeking to connect with the paranormal. In the next part, we'll dive deeper into the physical landmarks of the area, examining the specific locations that seem to attract the most ghostly activity and exploring their chilling ties to Oklahoma's haunted history. Dead Woman's Crossing is more than just a haunted road. It's a site where the physical surroundings themselves seem to bear the weight of tragedy and paranormal activity. The area is marked by distinct locations that have become focal points for ghostly encounters and strange happenings. Each of these landmarks contributes to the chilling atmosphere that defines this notorious stretch of Oklahoma's countryside. One of the most significant locations tied to the haunting is the bridge that spans the creek where Katie DeWitt James's body was discovered in the early 20th century. This small, unassuming bridge is often the center of paranormal activity. Visitors have reported seeing spectral figures standing near the edges of the bridge, seemingly gazing down into the water. Others claim to hear the faint sound of footsteps on the wooden planks, even when no one else is present. The creek itself holds a somber significance. This narrow waterway winds quietly through the rural landscape, its surface often reflecting the moonlight on clear nights. But for those who visit, the creek exudes a strange, almost unnatural stillness. Paranormal investigators have noted that the water seems to amplify the eerie sensations in the area. Some visitors have claimed to see ghostly ripples moving across the surface, as if an unseen presence is disturbing the water. Beyond the bridge and the creek, an overgrown path leads deeper into the surrounding area, where remnants of old structures and fencing can still be found. These decaying landmarks serve as a reminder of the rural past, but they also add to the unsettling ambiance. Some believe that these relics hold residual energy from the time of Katie's murder, serving as silent witnesses to the crime. One lesser-known feature of the site is a cluster of trees near the creek, which locals have dubbed the Weeping Willows. While the trees themselves are not willows, their twisted and drooping branches create an ominous canopy, especially on foggy nights. It's said that visitors often feel an overwhelming sense of sadness when standing beneath them, as if the trees are mourning alongside Katie's restless spirit. Some have reported hearing faint cries or whispers emanating from the branches, though the sounds stop abruptly when approached. Another location of interest is the nearby crossroads, a spot historically linked to superstition and folklore. Crossroads have long been associated with the supernatural, believed to be places where the veil between the physical and spiritual worlds is thin. At Dead Woman's Crossing, this junction has its own share of chilling stories. Travelers have recounted seeing shadowy figures standing at the crossroads late at night, their outlines barely visible in the fog. Others have described a disorienting feeling of being watched, as if unseen eyes are following their every move. What makes these landmarks even more compelling is the way they seem to interact with visitors. Cameras and electronic devices frequently malfunction in the area, often refusing to capture clear images or draining batteries at an unusually fast rate. This has led many to believe that the energy surrounding these locations is strong enough to disrupt modern technology. The physical landmarks of Dead Woman's Crossing offer more than just eerie scenery. They provide tangible connections to the tragic events and paranormal phenomena that define this haunted location. In the next part, we'll explore personal stories and first-hand accounts from those who have dared to visit, shedding light on the deeply personal and often terrifying experiences tied to this enigmatic place. Dead Woman's Crossing has become a hotspot for ghost hunters, thrill seekers, and curious travelers who venture to experience its chilling reputation firsthand. Many who visit the site come away with unsettling stories, claiming to have witnessed inexplicable phenomena or felt the presence of something otherworldly. These personal encounters are as varied as they are disturbing, painting a vivid picture of the supernatural energy that lingers in this haunted location. One common experience reported by visitors is the sudden onset of an oppressive feeling of dread upon approaching the crossing. Many describe a heavy, almost suffocating atmosphere that seems to weigh down on them, particularly near the bridge and creek. This sensation is often accompanied by a noticeable drop in temperature, even on warm summer nights. Some visitors have even claimed that the air feels charged, as if an unseen energy permeates the area. Numerous accounts detail sightings of ghostly apparitions, often thought to be the spirit of Katie DeWitt James herself. These sightings are typically fleeting, but leave a lasting impression on those who witness them. One group of visitors described seeing the faint outline of a woman in a white dress standing near the edge of the creek. When they tried to approach, the figure disappeared, leaving only an eerie silence in its wake. Another individual reported seeing a shadowy figure walking along the bridge late at night, only for it to vanish as their headlights illuminated the spot. Audio phenomena are another frequent occurrence at Dead Woman's Crossing. Visitors often report hearing disembodied voices, whispers, or cries that seem to come from nowhere. A chilling story comes from a group of amateur paranormal investigators who visited the site with recording equipment. While reviewing their audio later, they discovered a faint but distinct voice saying, "Why?" followed by what sounded like a soft sob. This recording has been shared among local enthusiasts as evidence of the paranormal presence at the crossing. Other visitors have experienced physical sensations that defy explanation. Some report feeling as if they were being lightly touched or brushed by unseen hands, while others have described a sudden chill running down their spine. One particularly unnerving account came from a man who claimed that his car door slammed shut on its own while he was preparing to leave the site. Shaken, he quickly drove away, only to notice what he described as the faint reflection of a woman's face in his rearview mirror. Electronic disturbances are another hallmark of paranormal activity at Dead Woman's Crossing. Cameras often fail to capture images, and fully charged batteries drain inexplicably within minutes. A photographer who visited the site reported that her camera stopped working entirely while she was attempting to take pictures near the creek. When she later checked her memory card, she found a single image of the bridge, though she had not taken the photo herself. The picture was blurry and distorted, with what appeared to be a faint figure standing in the distance. The unexplained activity extends to vehicles as well. Drivers frequently report issues, such as sudden engine stalling, flickering headlights, or strange noises coming from their cars while parked near the crossing. Some have even claimed to hear faint tapping sounds on their windows, as if someone or something was trying to get their attention. These personal stories and encounters, shared by countless visitors over the years, add to the mystique and terror surrounding Dead Woman's Crossing. Each new experience contributes to the growing legend, leaving behind more questions than answers. As we wrap up, we'll explore the enduring legacy of this haunted place and the efforts to uncover the truth behind its mysteries. Dead Woman's Crossing remains one of Oklahoma's most infamous haunted locations, its dark history and unsettling phenomena continuing to captivate those who hear its story. For decades, it has drawn people from all walks of life: paranormal investigators, history buffs, and curious travelers, all hoping to uncover the truth behind its haunting reputation. Efforts to solve the mystery of Katie DeWitt James's tragic death have persisted, with researchers and historians delving into records and local lore to piece together what might have happened in the summer of 1905. While evidence points to betrayal and murder, the exact details remain murky. The failure to bring justice to Katie's case has only amplified the sense of unease surrounding the crossing, adding a layer of unresolved grief to the paranormal lore. For the locals of Custer County, Dead Woman's Crossing has become a permanent fixture in the region's identity. Some see it as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the vulnerabilities faced by women in a time when justice was often elusive. Others view it as a source of intrigue and mystery, a symbol of the thin veil between the living and the dead. Community stories and recollections keep Katie's memory alive, ensuring that her story is not forgotten. The crossing also holds a strange cultural significance, blending history and legend in a way that sparks endless curiosity. Schools, libraries, and local organizations occasionally host events or discussions about the crossing's history, reinforcing its importance in Oklahoma folklore. Even skeptics who dismiss tales of ghosts and hauntings acknowledge the site's historical relevance, appreciating its role in preserving the memory of a tragic event. Beyond its ghostly reputation, Dead Woman's Crossing serves as a reminder of the power of storytelling. The tales passed down through generations have transformed a small bridge and creek into a place of national intrigue. Ghost hunters have documented their findings in videos and podcasts, while writers have spun chilling accounts of the paranormal activity reported at the site. This collective fascination ensures that the story of Dead Woman's Crossing will endure, evolving with each retelling. As paranormal investigations continue, the evidence collected only deepens the mystery. Researchers who spend nights at the crossing often leave with more questions than answers, their experiences adding to the growing body of lore. While no one can say for sure what haunts this eerie spot, the stories and experiences shared by visitors suggest that some part of Katie's spirit may still linger, seeking resolution for a life cut tragically short. Ultimately, Dead Woman's Crossing is more than just a haunted location. It's a place where history, tragedy, and the unknown collide, leaving an indelible mark on all who encounter it. Whether you visit for the ghost stories, the historical significance, or sheer curiosity, one thing is certain: Dead Woman's Crossing is a place you'll never forget. As we close the story of this haunting site, we're reminded of how the past continues to shape the present. If you ever find yourself near Weatherford, Oklahoma, and feel brave enough to visit Dead Woman's Crossing, remember to tread carefully. The spirits of the past may still be watching. Fort Reno, located in the heart of Oklahoma, has a rich history that dates back to the year 1875. It was established as a military outpost during the many horrific wars fought in the ARA to protect settlers and help them take control of the surrounding areas. Over the years, the fort served many purposes, from a military base to a place of refuge during the times of war. As the years went on, it became a key player in Oklahoma's military history. The fort's location made it a strategic site for the U.S. Army. It was originally built to keep peace between Native American tribes and the settlers moving west. Fort Reno played a significant role in this, especially during the wars. The fort was used to house soldiers who were tasked with keeping the peace and keeping settlers safe. It was home to many soldiers and their families who lived on the fort grounds during its active years. In addition to its role in the brutal wars, Fort Reno also played an important part in the history of the U.S. Army during the late 1800s and early 1900s. After the wars ended, Fort Reno's purpose shifted, and it became a site for training soldiers and housing prisoners of war. This shift in the fort's function allowed it to remain in operation for many decades, even as times and technology changed. As time went on, the fort began to see a different type of history unfolding within its walls. It became a site where various stories and legends began to grow. Some of these stories came from the soldiers who had once served there, while others came from the many families who lived on the fort's grounds. Over time, Fort Reno went from being just another military post to becoming a location of great historical and paranormal interest. Today, Fort Reno is a popular historical landmark in Oklahoma. Tourists and history buffs alike visit the site to learn about its military past and to explore the remnants of its original buildings. Though much of the fort's original structure has been preserved, there are still many parts of the site that show signs of age and wear. Visitors can still walk through the grounds and get a glimpse of the past, including the old fortifications and the homes where soldiers once lived. But while Fort Reno's history is filled with significant military moments and cultural shifts, it's the stories of eerie encounters and ghostly sightings that truly set it apart from other historical landmarks in Oklahoma. Some believe that the spirits of those who once lived and died there continue to roam the grounds, leaving behind a legacy of unexplained experiences that continue to captivate those who visit. But are these ghost stories true? or just a product of overactive imaginations. That's something we'll explore as we dive deeper into Fort Reno's haunted history. As we continue, we'll take a closer look at the strange happenings reported at Fort Reno and try to separate fact from fiction. As the years passed, Fort Reno's reputation began to grow, not just for its military history, but for the strange and unsettling events reported by those who visited or lived there. Many soldiers and their families, who once called the fort home, have shared stories of odd noises, inexplicable occurrences, and even sightings of ghostly figures. These eerie encounters have fueled a growing legend about Fort Reno being haunted, with both believers and skeptics offering their own explanations for the strange happenings. One of the most common paranormal claims involves the ghostly figure of a young girl dressed in a white gown. Visitors have reported seeing her wandering the grounds, especially near the old barracks in the fort's cemetery. Some believe that she is the spirit of a child who tragically died at the fort, though the details of her death remain unclear. Her appearance is often described as fleeting, with people catching glimpses of her out of the corner of their eyes before she vanishes into thin air. For many, the image of this lost child has become one of the most haunting aspects of Fort Reno's supernatural lore. Another frequently reported encounter at the fort is the appearance of a male figure, believed to be the spirit of a soldier. This apparition is often described as wearing an old military uniform, walking through the fort's buildings, or even standing silently in the shadows. Many who have encountered this ghost claim that it's the spirit of a soldier who died while serving at the fort, possibly during one of the many conflicts the military post was involved in. Some visitors even report that they feel a chill in the air or an uneasy presence when this soldier's ghost is near. These sightings aren't isolated to just a few visitors. There have been numerous accounts from people who claim to have experienced the unexplained while exploring the fort. People have reported hearing the sounds of footsteps echoing through empty hallways, voices calling out in the distance, and the sound of military drums playing on a breeze that doesn't exist. In some cases, these sounds seem to come from nowhere, leaving those who hear them unsettled and searching for an explanation. The fort's cemetery, where many soldiers and their families were laid to rest, is often cited as one of the most active locations on the grounds. People who visit the cemetery often describe an overwhelming feeling of sadness and unease. Some have even claimed to see the spirits of the deceased soldiers walking among the gravestones. The cemetery, with its old, weathered headstones, adds an eerie atmosphere to the already haunting reputation of Fort Reno. In addition to these personal accounts, there are also rumors of strange happenings that have been captured on film. Some people believe that Fort Reno's haunted reputation is due to more than just the stories passed down over the years. It's as if the spirits themselves want to be seen. There have been claims of shadowy figures appearing in photographs, unexplainable glows in the darkness, and other strange occurrences that seem to defy logic. While some skeptics believe these images could be explained by camera malfunctions or the power of suggestion, others remain convinced that these photographs are evidence of something otherworldly. Despite the numerous reports of strange occurrences, there are still those who remain unconvinced. Skeptics argue that the fort's eerie atmosphere could simply be the result of the natural environment, combined with the power of suggestion. The fort's isolation and the long history of battles, loss, and hardship could be contributing factors to the rumors of ghostly encounters. Some people argue that the human brain is wired to look for patterns, especially in places with a heavy historical background like Fort Reno. According to them, the shadows, creaks, and sounds that visitors experience could be explained by the environment and the power of the mind to imagine things in such a setting. However, for those who have experienced these events firsthand, the paranormal activity at Fort Reno remains a very real and unsettling part of the fort's history. The conflicting viewpoints only add to the mystery of the place, leaving many to wonder if the spirits of Fort Reno are truly haunting the grounds, or if the fort's eerie past is simply the perfect breeding ground for ghost stories. In the next part, we'll take a closer look at some of the most famous legends associated with Fort Reno and explore why these ghostly tales continue to intrigue and frighten those who visit. Among the many ghost stories that surround Fort Reno, a few legends stand out as particularly chilling and fascinating. These stories have been passed down through the years and have become an integral part of the fort's haunted reputation. They provide a glimpse into the past, highlighting the tragic and often violent events that took place at the fort, and offer a deeper understanding of why some believe the spirits of Fort Reno are still lingering. One of the most well-known legends at Fort Reno involves the tragic tale of a soldier who met an untimely and violent end during his service. According to the story, the soldier was caught in a battle at the fort, where he was killed in action. His spirit, many believe, never left. Over the years, visitors have claimed to see the ghostly figure of this soldier wandering the fort, still dressed in his military uniform. The spirit is often seen walking alone in the night, perhaps searching for peace or his comrades. Some people say that they've heard him calling out in the distance, though they can never quite locate the source of the sound. This soldier's ghost is not the only one that has left a mark on Fort Reno. The fort's involvement in the many battles in the area has left a heavy historical and emotional burden on the site. During the late 1800s, the fort became a key location in the conflicts between the U.S. Army and Native American tribes. It was a time of great upheaval and violence, and many soldiers and Native Americans lost their lives in and around the fort. It is believed that some of these souls still linger at Fort Reno, unable to move on from the traumatic events they endured. One of the most poignant stories connected to this period is that of the Cherokee Native American prisoners who were held at the fort in the late 1800s. After being captured during the horrific wars, many Cherokee were imprisoned at Fort Reno. Conditions in the prison were harsh, and many prisoners died from disease and exposure. It's believed by some that the spirits of these prisoners continue to haunt the fort, seeking justice for the suffering they endured. Visitors have reported hearing whispers or faint cries coming from the direction of the old prison site, though no one can be seen. The emotional weight of this dark chapter in the fort's history has led some to believe that the souls of those prisoners still remain at Fort Reno, forever trapped in the past. Along with the spirits of soldiers and prisoners, there are also stories of visitors encountering something much more unsettling: unnatural, otherworldly beings. Some claim to have seen shadowy figures moving through the fort's buildings, figures that seem to shift and disappear as soon as they're noticed. These shadowy shapes are often reported in areas where tragic events are said to have taken place, such as the old barracks or the Fort Cemetery. Witnesses describe these figures as tall and dark, with no discernible features, moving silently through the halls and walls, as if they are a part of the building itself. Another popular ghost story from Fort Reno involves the sounds of footsteps. It is said that late at night, when the fort is quiet and empty, people have heard the distinct sound of boots echoing across the ground. Some believe these footsteps belong to the restless spirits of soldiers who once walked the fort's halls. Others argue that it could be the sound of spirits still carrying out their duties from the afterlife, continuing to patrol the fort even in death. In some instances, visitors have reported hearing the sound of marching footsteps, as if an entire regiment of soldiers was moving in unison, only for the sound to suddenly stop, leaving a chilling silence behind. The most famous of these stories is perhaps the tale of the ghostly soldier, who is said to appear at night, standing in one of the fort's old structures, silently observing those who pass by. Those who have encountered the soldier's spirit describe an overwhelming sense of unease and tension, as if the very air around them grows heavy with history. The soldier's ghost is sometimes said to stare intensely at visitors, as though he is trying to communicate, but those who attempt to speak with him are met with silence. These legends and ghost stories surrounding Fort Reno continue to captivate visitors, and whether one believes in the supernatural or not, they remain an essential part of the fort's identity. The tragic and violent history that the fort holds seems to be etched into its walls, and the lingering spirits are believed to be drawn to these places, forever bound by the events of the past. As we continue exploring Fort Reno, we will look at the role of paranormal investigations and the evidence that has been captured, giving even more weight to the claims of ghostly encounters. Stay tuned as we'll examine the chilling story behind the photo that helped solidify Fort Reno's haunted reputation. The stories and legends surrounding Fort Reno have long intrigued both believers and skeptics of the supernatural, but it wasn't until paranormal investigators became involved that the fort's haunted reputation truly gained widespread attention. In the 1970s, a group of paranormal enthusiasts visited the fort to conduct a thorough investigation, hoping to capture proof of the eerie occurrences reported by many visitors over the years. What they discovered would go on to become one of the most famous pieces of ghostly evidence in American history. During their investigation, the group focused on several areas of the fort that had long been associated with paranormal activity, including the old barracks, the cemetery, and the prison grounds where the Cherokee prisoners had once been held. These locations, laden with tragic history, seemed to resonate with paranormal energy. Armed with cameras, audio equipment, and other tools, the investigators scoured the area, hoping to capture something extraordinary. It wasn't until later, when the photographs were developed, that the team realized they had unknowingly captured something truly remarkable. In one particular image, taken near the old barracks, a ghostly figure appeared, dressed in a military uniform. The figure seemed to stand in stark contrast to the background, almost as if it were a part of the fort itself, but its human form was undeniable. The soldier in the photograph stood tall and straight, his posture military and formal, but his face was blurred and indistinct, as though it existed in another realm entirely. The photograph quickly gained attention, not just from the paranormal community, but also from skeptics, journalists, and anyone interested in the supernatural. Some believed it was definitive proof of the fort's haunted nature, while others dismissed it as an optical illusion or a trick of the light. Regardless of the debates, the photo became a symbol of Fort Reno's eerie reputation, circulating widely and sparking renewed interest in the fort's ghost stories. For many, the photograph was a game changer. The figure in the image, thought to be the ghost of a soldier, provided something concrete, something that could not easily be dismissed. It was no longer just hearsay or speculation about what might be happening in the shadows of the fort. Here was physical evidence of the paranormal, captured at a site known for its violent history and tragic events. The photo also raised important questions about the nature of the paranormal. Could it be that the restless spirits of soldiers and prisoners who suffered and died at the fort were still somehow bound to the land? Was the figure in the photo a ghost from a different era, caught momentarily in a haunting glimpse of the past? For many, the photo seemed to suggest that the boundaries between the living and the dead were not as clear-cut as we might believe. Beyond the photograph, other investigators and visitors to the fort have claimed to experience unusual activity, further lending credence to the idea that the fort is haunted. Some claim to have heard strange noises while exploring, such as the sound of doors slamming shut or the distinct rustling of footsteps on the wooden floors. Others have reported that their electronic equipment, including cameras and phones, suddenly malfunctioned without explanation, leaving them with no clear record of their experiences. However, the photo remains the most compelling piece of evidence in the fort's paranormal history. It serves as a reminder that the unexplained can often be the most fascinating part of our world. For those who are skeptical of the supernatural, it remains an image that challenges the boundary between what we understand as reality and what might exist beyond our comprehension. In the years since the photo was taken, Fort Reno's reputation as a haunted location has only grown. Visitors continue to flock to the site, eager to experience the ghostly presence for themselves. Whether it's the spirits of soldiers, Native American prisoners, or other lost souls, there's no shortage of tales and experiences to be shared by those who venture into the fort's mysterious past. As we move toward the final part of this story, we'll look at how the haunted history of Fort Reno continues to captivate and intrigue those who visit. And we'll delve into the debate over whether or not the fort is truly haunted, or if it's all just the result of imagination and suggestion. Next, we'll wrap up our exploration of Fort Reno's chilling history and supernatural lore. As we conclude our exploration of Fort Reno's haunted past, it's important to acknowledge that the fort's eerie reputation continues to spark both fascination and debate. Despite the many reports of paranormal experiences, the question of whether Fort Reno is truly haunted remains unanswered. What is clear, however, is that the fort's complex and tragic history provides ample reason to believe that its grounds could be home to restless spirits. Fort Reno's history goes beyond just the ghost stories that have surrounded it for decades. From its establishment in 1875 to its closure in 1971, the fort played an important role in American military history, particularly in the Western expansion and the conflicts with Native American tribes. It was home to both soldiers and civilians, and its grounds saw moments of great tension and violence. The most significant of these events was the infamous Cherokee Native American prisoner of war incident, which occurred during the late 19th century. Hundreds of Native American prisoners were held at the fort, enduring harsh conditions and suffering through the violence of their captivity. Many believe that the spirits of these prisoners who faced such suffering continue to haunt the area to this day. The fort's military history alone would be enough to leave its mark on the land, but it is the personal stories of soldiers, families, and prisoners who lived and died there that fuel the ongoing paranormal lore. Some claim that the spirits of soldiers who fought and died at the fort still linger, while others believe that the victims of injustice, like the Native American prisoners, may never have found peace. Whether these spirits are trapped in the fort's physical space or simply bound to the land, their presence has become an indelible part of Fort Reno's legacy. Over the years, Fort Reno has attracted countless paranormal investigators, history buffs, and thrill seekers, all hoping to encounter something supernatural. While some report strange noises, flickering lights, and shadowy figures, others leave with only a sense of the fort's eerie atmosphere. Still, the belief in its hauntings persists, and the stories of ghostly apparitions, footsteps echoing in empty rooms, and whispered voices in the dark continue to circulate among visitors. Yet even beyond the world of ghost stories, Fort Reno has become an important historical site. It is a place where the history of the American frontier, the military, and the Native American experience converge. While the paranormal stories continue to add mystery to its legacy, they also highlight the fort's darker history, the suffering and loss that occurred within its walls. Today, Fort Reno stands as both a testament to history and a symbol of the unknown. Its ghost stories have become an integral part of its mystique, drawing visitors from all over the country who are eager to explore its haunted past. Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, the history of Fort Reno is undeniably rich and complex. For some, it's a place to honor the memory of those who lived and died there, while for others, it's a place where the veil between the living and the dead might certainly be thin enough to glimpse the past. In the end, Fort Reno's haunted reputation will likely continue to live on, fueled by the numerous tales and experiences shared by those who have ventured into its storied halls. Whether you're drawn to it for its rich history or its ghostly legends, one thing is certain: Fort Reno remains a place that continues to captivate the imagination of all who visit. Thanks for joining us on this journey through Fort Reno's haunted history. If you've ever visited or experienced anything strange at the fort, we'd love to hear your story in the comments below. As always, if you're fascinated by ghost stories and haunted places, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more chilling tales. Until next time, stay spooky.